Sometimes that thing that you hate most about your life is your secret source of joy. This is a lesson that I learned over multiple years, and don't you wish those lessons just happened really quickly instead of most of your life? And it started because of who and what I am. My father was half Indian, half Malaysian. My mom is South African Zulu tribe with Dutch ancestry, so light-skinned African woman, which makes me a mutt. And I present mostly as Black or Indian, but I have been mistaken for Moroccan, Egyptian, Iranian, Brazilian. Basically, people see in me what they want to see. On top of that, they gave me an Arabic name, Shiraz, which means one who is sweet. They looked at me, it was like, oh my God, we're going to call him sweet. Now, by the time I was 17, they realized they should have named me Sahir, which means one who is sarcastic, but that ship has sailed, and here I am. Now, being a mutt affords me a lot of fun and being able to relate with a lot of people, but it also meant that because I present as Black or Indian, I grew up with both Black and Indian racial slurs. And it didn't hit me that much growing up. It would happen every now and then. But when I started to travel, things changed. I got home from a trip to Brazil with a bunch of my friends, and I got stopped at the airport after customs. The officer comes up and says, we need to ask you some more questions. So I went to my friends and said, hey, they need to ask us some more questions. And he's like, no, not them, just you. And I'm like, oh, they're all white, I'm Black, I see what's going on here. And then as I continued to travel, every time I crossed a border, I got asked extra questions, I got my luggage searched, sometimes I got my person searched. It was just a thing. Sometimes I even called them on it. I was traveling through Europe, I was on the Eurorail, and this guy calls me over to check my passport, but he's letting all these other people go. And so I said, is this your black check? And he turned red. He's like, look, I just got to do my job. I said, look, I just want to make sure this isn't in my head. Is this your black check? He's like, yeah, they told me to check the black people. So I'm like, okay, so it's not my imagination. This is actually what's happening. And this just continued. If I traveled with friends, I remember traveling with one of my friends driving across the border, and they searched his whole car, and he goes, I travel across the border all the time. This never happens to me. I'm like, welcome to my world. And the worst part, which turned out to be not so bad in the end, was when I went to Spain. I had actually managed to cross a border without getting checked. And I'm like, wow, things are looking up. Except when I'm in Madrid, I'm standing at a fountain with a bunch of people, other tourists, and an undercover officer comes up and says, I need to see your passport. I'm like, okay. I give him my passport. He goes, you don't have a visa? You're not supposed to be here. I'm like, I'm Canadian. I don't need a visa. He goes, no, you need a visa. Come with me. So he takes me and he puts me in a paddy wagon. I've never been in a paddy wagon. And I'm being driven around the city, and then he throws another black guy in, another black guy in, another black guy in. I'm like, okay, I see what's happening here. They take us to jail, and then they start processing us, which I then found, to my horror, that it includes a strip search and a cavity search. So I'm watching the other guys one at a time take their clothes off and then get searched, and it was just to humiliate us. It was just to treat us in this way. And I'm feeling my anxiety come up as I take each step closer and closer to this moment where it's going to be sheer humiliation. Now, because I was in that state of anxiety, I forgot that at the time I was a bodybuilder, so I was in really good shape. And I was unaware that we were in view of the holding cell, which had the working girls. So when my clothes came off, that cell erupted. Woo, baby, yes, show us what you got, man. And I'm like, oh, it's not so bad. I got a cheering section. But then I spent the night on the concrete floor. When I got back home, I had a conversation with one of my coaches. And he says to me, Shiraz, are you ready to step out of that story? And I got pissed, okay, because racism's not a story. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is a real thing. Racism exists around the world. He goes, racism's horrible. Racism should be banished. But what you're experiencing is a story. I'm like, what? You need to explain this to me. And here's the thing about stories. Everyone is running stories in their lives. We have good stories, we have bad stories. Very common things are, I always find the best parking spots. That's a story. And stories are matter of fact for people. This is just the way my life works. You don't realize you're creating them, and you're creating them with reasons. And every story has a hidden benefit to it. Sometimes it's an obvious one, but there's always a hidden benefit to it. I looked at him and I said, what's the benefit to my story? I'm getting delayed, I'm getting harassed, I'm getting humiliated. There's no upside to this story. And he looks at me and goes, Shiraz, when you tell your border crossing stories, you light up. You feed off everyone's reactions to your adversity. And you can't keep telling the same story because people will get bored with it. So you have to keep getting new material by getting stopped at more and more borders. You're addicted to getting stopped at borders because you're addicted to the feedback people give you. That's the benefit. And I was just like, okay. He got me. Right? As soon as he said it, I knew that was true. And this is something that's so important because this horrible thing was something I was unconsciously, actively promoting. In my body language, in probably the way I dressed, in what I did, definitely in the way I showed up. Because when I realized that was going on, I decided, you know what? I don't need to be addicted to people's sympathy for me. I can be addicted to people's praise of me, people's admiration of me. So I said, I'm done with this. Let's flip it around. I'm going to make more success. I'm going to make bigger success. And since that day, I haven't been stopped at a single border. Okay. And here's the other thing. Did you know that there are non-white customs agents? See, I didn't know that because I was unconsciously lining myself up with the white ones for maximum racism efficiency so I could have a great story. That's done now. In fact, it's so far the other way that I was at an event in Mexico last year. When I came back, I was at the border, and the guy says, okay, what were you there for? I said, I was there for speaker training. He goes, oh, so you're a speaker? I said, no, I'm a reality interventionist, but I was there to learn to speak from stage. And he says, okay, now you're gonna have to tell me what a reality interventionist is. And so I explained it to him, and then he's just staring at me. And I'm wondering what's going on. I know I'm out of this story, and I'm staring at him, he's staring at me. And then finally I said, do you want my card? He goes, yes, I want your card. So we've come way on the opposite way that things used to be. So what I want you to get now is this is not a story about racism. This is a story about addiction. And oftentimes you are addicted to the adversity in your life because of the feedback that you get from it. You say, well, this happens to me because I'm black or because I'm Indian. This happens because I'm a woman, because I'm too old, because I'm too short. If you're telling that story over and over again and you're getting sympathy from it, you're addicted to it. And I'd like you to start stepping out of that. Notice the stories that come out of your mouth, even the cliches. These are all the stories running in your subconscious. These are all things you are addicted to. Start getting addicted to the good stories. Because if you're addicted to the good stories, it's hard to get out of them, right? I would rather have the world is my oyster where I keep finding pearls than you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Right? And you think they're just expressions, but they're running all the time. So if there's something that's going on, a consistent problem going on in your life, I want you to, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Why do I want this? What is the hidden benefit I'm not seeing? And sometimes it's not an immediate benefit like people show you sympathy. Sometimes it's to prevent something bad from happening. For instance, when I started working, I quickly went to a six-figure salary, just over $100,000. But then I stopped. I couldn't get any higher. And I worked with business coaches. I tried different methods. There should have been no way I could have gone further than 100,000. Then I worked with someone to see, well, what is that hidden benefit I'm not seeing? And it turns out when I was a teenager, my family and my friends were all saying, Shiraz, you're really smart, you're creative, you're going to do great things, you're going to have that house on the beach, make millions of dollars, travel the world, and then we get to come hang out with you and travel with you. And they're thinking, this is wonderful. And I'm thinking, they're going to leech off me. Oh, hell no. So my unconscious mind said, 100,000, we're comfortable, but not so much that they're going to start leeching. So we're going to keep it right here where it's safe. So the hidden benefit was safety. When I let that go, when I said, you know what, if they ask, no. I mean, sometimes it'll be a yes, but if they're just trying to leech off me, absolutely not, without any feeling of guilt, I doubled my income over the next year. That one belief kept everything locked in. So this is the two things I want you to look for. What's the immediate benefit, or what's the benefit that you're not seeing that's on the other side of the problem if that problem goes away? When you figure that out, you can get out of the addiction. Now, the second thing to remember is that this is an addiction. So sometimes you're going to see progress, and then you're going to fall off the wagon, you come down. And if anyone's experienced yo-yo income, that's what that actually is you start getting out of the place, withdrawal kicks in, you come back to where it's safe, and then you keep trying it. And unless you remove the reason for the addiction, this is just going to continue. Once you do that, it starts to go up. So treat it like an addiction, because what I found is when people have these successes and these failures, they punish themselves, right? They get upset with themselves, they chastise themselves mentally, and you don't need it, because that failure, that's the punishment. You're good. You don't need to double up on that, okay? But when you treat it as addiction, you go, oh, I fell off the wagon. Be forgiving of yourself. Okay, let's go back in. We have to keep beating this addiction and beating this addiction until we're finally out of it. The last thing to keep in mind is, in order to change your neural pathways, which is one way to change these addictions, you have to be able to hold a thought and the corresponding emotion for 30 seconds or more. Right? You may have seen movies like The Secret where they say, you know, if you want the car, imagine yourself sitting in the car and feeling the wind in your hair. I don't know what that's all about, but they feel that wind in their hair. And, you know, you just get into that. But you have to actually hold that picture in real time for 30 seconds or more for your neural pathways to start to change. Most people can hold a thought for 7 seconds or less, right? About as much as a goldfish. So you want to start doing exercises, find meditations, find brain training exercises where you can learn to hold thoughts for 30 seconds or more, and then use those to hold thoughts of what you want, the person you want to be, see yourself on the stage, closing deals, being fit, whatever it is. And your brain will start to think, well, this is who I am, because I'm seeing it in real time. So your brain doesn't care if it's actually happening or imagining it. It treats everything as real. So when you do this, you'll start to see changes in your life. Right. I did this on a physical level in that in April, I was in Cancun with some friends, and we got the pictures back, and my stomach was like out to here. It was like, what? When did that happen? So I started picturing myself at the gym. I'd be going out for a walk, and during the walk, I was working out in real time. I'd be doing the push-ups, I'd be doing sit-ups, and when I did that, my brain is like, well, he goes to the gym every day. And then eventually I started actually craving working out. I started working out. And then also, like, my brain's like, well, this is what you look like, because I imagined the body I wanted. This is what you look like. So that person doesn't eat this and doesn't eat this. My chocolate craving went down, my sweet craving went down. It was really weird, because I wasn't pushing myself to do it. I was just doing those little exercises, and all of a sudden I'm down 2 notches on my belt. So it's amazing. This works for fitness, this works for money, this works for visibility. Start looking at this in this way. Why do you actually want it? Not why is it happening to me? And who do I actually want to be? Start being that person internally. When you do that, you will start to see changes in your life. And just a shout out to the other people that are doing Action Talks. They all have their stories that you're going to learn. When those come up, when you're watching them, ask, how does this apply to me? Because in their stories, you will find hidden beliefs that are keeping you stuck, keeping you locked in place, that you can then release and say, you know what, I'm done with that story. I'm stepping out. So enjoy the rest of the Action Talks. Enjoy the life you're going to create once you conquer the addiction and get addicted to the good stuff. I'm Shiraz. Thank you.